Hotels are transient places. Spaces where thousands of strangers leave behind their traces, their stories, and sometimes their shadows. But when the lobby lights dim and the hallways grow deserted, the walls of these buildings begin to whisper secrets that no one was meant to hear. From rooms that don't appear on any map, to presences that refuse to check out. Today, I bring you 4 real hotel horror stories that will make you think twice before locking your room door tonight. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready. Because after this, room service will be the last thing you'll want to call for. I work the night shift at an old city hotel. One of those forgotten places where time seems to stand still between cracked walls and flickering fluorescent lights. My name is Alex, and my routine is simple: cleaning rooms, emptying bins, and making sure everything is spotless for the next day's guests. But there's one part of the job I especially hate: the 3rd floor bathroom. It's not because of the usual mess, but because of something more intangible, something that makes me feel watched, as if the very air is charged with an invisible presence. That October night, the hotel was nearly empty. Only a couple of rooms were occupied by lonely travelers who preferred the darkness of the early hours to rest. I started my rounds at 2 a.m. as usual. The 3rd floor bathroom was last on my list. It was a narrow space with white tiles stained by dampness and a fogged-up mirror reflecting my tired face. The faucet dripped constantly, an irritating sound that echoed like an irregular heartbeat. I cleaned it carefully, scrubbed the floor, wiped the sink, and dried the water droplets that always seemed to pool in the corners. I locked the door, following protocol, and walked away, thinking I could finally go home early. But minutes later, something made me turn back. A noise. No, not a loud noise, but a whisper, like the brush of bare feet on a wet floor. I stopped in the hallway, my heart beating a little faster. Had I forgotten something? I went back to the bathroom, turned the key, and pushed the door open. What I saw made my blood run cold. The floor was wet again. Puddles of fresh water spread across the tiles as if someone had just been showering. The mirror was fogged over, with finger marks tracing irregular shapes, and the faucet was dripping faster now, as if it had just been used. What the hell? I muttered to myself. I locked the door again, making sure it was secure, and walked away. Maybe it was a guest's prank, or perhaps the plumbing was failing. But deep down I knew it wasn't. I had cleaned that bathroom less than 5 minutes ago. There was no time for it to get that wet. I decided to ignore it and continue my work. I went to room 302, changed the sheets, and emptied the trash. But as I did, I couldn't get the bathroom out of my head. Why was it wet? Who had entered? The hotel was locked down at that hour. No one else had access. I went back to the bathroom, this time with more determination. I opened the door and stepped inside. The air was cold and damp, as if the steam from a hot shower had just dissipated. The floor was dry now, but there was something on the mirror, a smudge, like a small, child-sized handprint. I leaned in, wiping it with my cloth, but as I did, a shiver ran down my spine. It felt as if someone was watching me from the other side of the glass. I closed the door and left, but this time I couldn't concentrate. My mind was racing. Was it paranoia? The exhaustion of the night shift? I had heard stories about this hotel, urban legends of guests disappearing or unexplained noises. Once, a co-worker told me that in the 70s, a girl drowned in the 3rd floor bathtub. Her family was staying here, and they found her floating in the water, eyes wide open with an expression of terror. They said it was an accident, but rumors claimed otherwise, that the girl had seen something in the mirror, something that dragged her into the water. I shook my head, trying to push those thoughts away. It was just a story. But when I returned to the bathroom for the third time, my heart stopped. The door was ajar. I hadn't left it that way. I entered slowly, my pulse quickening. The bathroom was flooded, water up to my ankles, cold and dark. The mirror was completely fogged over, and on it, written with a finger, were the words, "Help me." The letters were dripping, as if made of diluted blood. I backed away, stumbling through the water. Who had written that, I guessed, or something else? I ran to the hallway, shouting to see if anyone was there, but the hotel was silent. I returned with a flashlight, shining it into the bathroom. The water was draining on its own, as if the drain was sucking it down. I cleaned everything again, drying every inch, and double-locked the door. This time I stayed outside, watching. Minutes passed, then hours. Nothing. At 5 a.m., I finished my shift and went home, exhausted but relieved. The next day, I returned for the evening shift. The bathroom was normal, dry, and clean. I thought it had been a dream, a hallucination from exhaustion. But that night, at 2 a.m., it happened again. I cleaned the bathroom, locked it, and minutes later, it was wet. This time, there was more. The water was lukewarm, as if someone had been bathing. And on the mirror, a small handprint with tiny fingers. I began to investigate. I searched the hotel archives. The story of the girl was real. Her name was Elena, 80 years old. Her family stayed in room 305, right next to the bathroom. One night, she was found drowned. They said she slipped, but the police report mentioned something strange. The bathroom was locked from the inside, and there was no way she could have entered alone. Since then, guests had reported showers turning on by themselves, water dripping for no reason, and visions of a girl in the mirror. That night, I decided to stay. I cleaned the bathroom at 2 a.m., locked it, and sat in the hallway with a chair. I waited. 5 minutes, 10, nothing. Then a sound, the faucet dripping. I stood up and opened the door. The bathroom was dry. But as I closed it, I heard a whisper, "Help me, please." It came from inside. I went back in, this time leaving the door open. The air turned freezing. The mirror fogged up slowly, and a shape appeared. A girl with wet hair plastered to her face and pleading eyes. "Help me," her voice said, like an echo in my head. She reached her hand toward the glass, and I, mesmerized, touched the mirror. That's when I felt the water rising. My feet got wet, then my knees. The bathroom was flooding, but there was no source. The girl in the mirror smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was one of triumph. I tried to leave, but the door slammed shut on its own. I pounded on the glass, screaming. The water was rising, cold, enveloping me. I saw the girl step out of the mirror, floating in the water, her fingers gripping my arm. "Join me," she whispered. I fought, kicking, but the water was dragging me down. I felt the panic, the drowning. Was it real, or was my mind betraying me? Suddenly, the door burst open. It was my co-worker, who had heard my screams. He pulled me out, soaked and trembling. The bathroom was dry again. "You're crazy," he told me. But I knew the truth. The girl hadn't left. That night, when I got home, I took a shower. The water heated up on its own, and in my bathroom mirror, I saw a reflection, waiting. I haven't been back to the hotel since. But every time I enter a bathroom in the middle of the night, I feel the water rising, and I hear her voice. "Help me." And I know that sooner or later, she will drag me down with her. Working night security. in a 12-story hotel is, generally, the definition of boredom. My job consists of walking the carpeted hallways, checking that emergency doors are locked, and watching the cameras. There was an unwritten rule that the veterans warned me about on my first day. If you see the cleaning cart after midnight, don't touch it and don't look inside. I thought it was just a hazing prank, until my Tuesday shift came round. It was 3:15 a.m. I was on the 7th floor, a floor that was closed for renovation. As I rounded the corner of the long hallway, I saw it, a standard cleaning cart, loaded with white sheets, chemicals, and trash bags. It was parked right in front of room 712. The strange thing was that there were no maids on duty at that hour, let alone on an empty floor. I assumed someone had forgotten it there in the afternoon. I grabbed the handle to roll it toward the service elevator and take it down to the basement. The cart weighed a ton, as if it were loaded with stones. With great effort, I got it into the elevator, went down to level -1, and left it in the supply room. I locked the door and went back to my station for a coffee. Half an hour later, I made my rounds on the 9th floor. As I stepped out of the elevator, I dropped my thermos. There it was, the same cleaning cart, with the same messily folded sheets and the same blue detergent stain on the side. It was parked in the exact same position, but this time in front of room 912. There was no human way someone could have taken it out of the locked storage room and brought it up 10 floors without me seeing it on the cameras. But seeing it, there wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that, as I approached, the white sheets on the cart began to twitch, as if something underneath them were trying to get out. I froze in the middle of the 9th floor hallway. The movement under the sheets wasn't erratic. It was slow, rhythmic, like a deep, heavy breath. I reached toward my belt, feeling the air turn thick and smelling a nauseating mix of bleach and something rotten. "Is someone there?" I asked, though my voice sounded like a broken whisper. Just as I reached out to lift the sheet, the cart gave a violent jolt and began rolling toward me on its own. I stumbled back, but the cart stopped dead just before touching me. From inside the black trash bag hanging off the side, a dark, thick liquid began to leak. It wasn't water or detergent. It looked like burnt motor oil, and it spread rapidly across the hallway carpet. Suddenly, a long, grayish, and disproportionately thin arm reached out from between the sheets. It was bare, and the skin seemed glued to the bone. The hand gripped the edge of the cart so hard that the wood creaked. At that moment, the hallway lights began to flicker, and I heard a sound that will haunt me forever. The sound of someone trying to scream with a throat full of water. I didn't wait to see the rest. I ran for the emergency stairs, flew down the 9 flights of stairs 4 at a time, and didn't stop until I reached the front desk. My co-worker saw me pale and sweating. When I told him about the cart, he wasn't surprised. He just sighed, pulled out an old logbook, and showed me a photo from the 70s. It was a maid who had been murdered by a guest, and her body was hidden specifically inside a laundry cart that was never found. I quit that very night. Months later, I heard the hotel close the 9th floor permanently. They say if you stay quiet in the lobby at 4 in the morning, you can still hear the distant echo of squeaky wheels roaming the hallways above, searching for a room that never quite gets clean. It was 2 a.m. and the lobby was in absolute silence. Suddenly, a red light flickered on the switchboard. An internal call from room 303. I answered immediately. "Good evening. Front desk. How may I help you?" No one replied. At first, I thought it was a line error, but then I heard it, breathing. It was slow, heavy, as if someone were exerting massive physical effort right next to the receiver. "Hello, are you all right?" I asked. The breathing stopped abruptly and they hung up. 5 minutes later, the light flashed again. 303. This time, before I could say a word, I heard the sound of something dragging across the carpeted floor, followed again by that wheezing breath, louder now, almost like a growl. I felt extremely uneasy. I checked the system to see who was checked into that room, and my blood ran cold. Room 303 was listed as out of order due to flooding months ago and was kept locked. I decided to go up and check. I thought a squatter might have snuck in or some teenager was playing a prank. When I reached the 3rd floor, I walked down the dark hallway to the door of 303. The silence there was different, heavier. I pressed my ear to the wood and clearly heard the click of someone dialing numbers on the phone keypad. One by one, click, click, click. With trembling hands, I pulled out the master key and slid it into the lock. As I opened the door, an unbearable smell of dampness hit me, along with a cold that made no sense. The room was in shadows, completely gutted. No bed, no curtains, no furniture. There was only the old, wall-mounted phone with its cord dangling. The receiver was not in its cradle. It was swaying in mid-air, held by a thread of static, 3 feet off the floor. As I stared at it, I heard my own voice coming out of the earpiece. "Good evening, front desk. How may I help you?" It was a recording of the call I had answered just minutes ago down in the lobby. But then, the recording stopped, and a different voice, hoarse and muffled, whispered, "Thanks for coming up." I was missing my towel. I backed into the hallway, but before closing the door, my flashlight beam hit the bathroom mirror. It was fogged up, as if someone had just taken a hot shower, and in the middle of the steam, the silhouette of a small hand was pressing against the glass from the other side. I slammed the door shut and ran down the stairs without looking back. I didn't quit. I couldn't afford to lose my job, but since that night, I've blocked extension 303 on the main switchboard. The terrifying part is that even though the system says the line is dead, every night at 3:15 a.m., the red light for that room starts flashing on my screen again. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if one day, by mistake, I decided to answer. I had been working the night shift at a modern 20-story hotel for 3 months. The best part of that place was the elevators. Fast, silent, and equipped with smart sensors. However, elevator number 4 always gave me trouble. It had a digital display that indicated the number of occupants and the current weight, supposedly to prevent overloading. One early morning, around 3 a.m., I stepped into elevator 4 in the lobby to go up and inspect the gym on the top floor. I was completely alone. I pressed the button for the 20th floor, and the doors slid shut. Just as the elevator began to move, I heard a sharp beep. I looked at the digital screen and felt my blood freeze. Occupants 2. I looked around. The elevator had mirrors on all 3 walls, so I could see everything. No one was there with me. I thought the sensor was malfunctioning, but then the number changed to occupants 3. The elevator suddenly stopped on the 4th floor, even though I hadn't pressed that button. The doors opened slowly into a dark, empty hallway. No one entered, no one left. But when the doors closed again, the sensor read, "Occupants 4." I began to feel a suffocating heat, as if the small space were truly packed with people. I could smell an intense, antique floral perfume, and suddenly, I felt an icy brush against my right hand, as if someone had squeezed against me in the corner of the elevator to make room for the others. The elevator continued to rise, but now it did so with an agonizing slowness, as if it were truly struggling to carry the weight of 4 people. The digital indicator flickered again, and the number jumped to 5. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. The elevator floor creaked, and I felt like I had no room to move my arms. I was pinned into a corner by presences I couldn't see. I avoided looking in the mirrors out of pure instinct until a sound forced me to. I heard the crack of a joint right behind my ear. Looking up at the mirror in front of me, my heart skipped a beat. I was the only solid body in the reflection, but my uniform was being wrinkled inward, as if 2 invisible hands were gripping me by the shoulders. Suddenly, the weight sensor began to climb uncontrollably. 6, 8, 12. The overload warning beep turned into a constant shriek. The elevator ground to a halt between the 14th and 15th floors, and the ceiling lights exploded, leaving me in total darkness. In the middle of that black silence, I felt a gelid breath on my neck, and a woman's voice whispered very softly, "Please let us get off with you." The lights came back with a violent flicker, and the elevator plummeted back down to the lobby. The doors burst open, and the sensor instantly read, "Occupants 1." I practically fell out of there and refused to ever use that elevator again. The next day, I asked to review the security footage. In the video, I am seen alone in the elevator. But there is one detail the technician couldn't explain throughout the entire trip. My shadow on the floor wasn't alone. It was surrounded by 4 other dark shadows writhing around me. The next day, I asked to review the security footage. In the video, I am seen alone in the elevator. But there is one detail the technician couldn't explain throughout the entire trip. My shadow on the floor wasn't alone. It was surrounded by 4 other dark shadows writhing around me.